Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It's Friday, June the 10th, 2022. This morning, perhaps underscoring what Dr. Chavis's message about getting out to vote. Look what some voters in Michigan are backing. A GOP candidate for governor has been arrested and charged for his part in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Also this morning, a leaked draft report from a Harvard faculty committee has revealed that the university possesses in its museum collections the remains of nearly 7,000 Native Americans and almost 20 people who were likely enslaved. Obviously, the big news came out of last night's congressional hearings. We're going to talk about all that and more with Terry Sanders of the Omaha Star, the publisher of the Omaha Star. Of course, Sam Collins of the Washington Informant, and our buddy James Wright of the Washington Informant. Everybody, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Look, a candidate in Michigan, Ryan Kelly, he's running for governor. He was arrested yesterday on charges related to his involvement in the Capitol riots on January 6th. According to the Justice Department, Ryan Kelly was arrested on misdemeanor charges stemming from the Capitol breach. He was arrested in Allendale. He is to make his initial appearance in actually this afternoon in U.S. District Court for the Western District of Michigan. Look, we were going to discuss this, and we are going to discuss this, but I know what's on you guys' minds is that hearing last night. Terry, let's start with that. This candidate, he's arrested. I don't know how that's going to affect that election. If you want to, give your thoughts on that, that's fine. But let's just go to what happened last night. What was your impressions on this explosive hearing?
It was a lot of information that we had not heard. It just brings back chills to me. I remember when I heard what was going on at the Capitol, and I immediately text my daughter who worked there at the time and said, "Where are you?" "Oh, we were just evacuated." I did not know what was going on. And when she said evacuated, that sounds like a serious situation. And then I turned on news on the computer and I was like, oh my God. And I guess my question is, and I think this is everybody's question, had that been us tearing up the Capitol, how far do you think that would have gone? How long do you think it would have gone on? And would we still be talking about it? Because everybody would no doubt be DEAD or in chains or in jail somewhere. I visited Washington, D.C. in April of that year. And I just kind of wanted to walk by there. I didn't want to go up on it. But windows still broken out and boarded up. This is what represents us as a people.
Yeah.
And people are still talking about, well, democracy, quit it. Just quit it. Because we have got to redirect. I was and sundown laws. You don't think that still exists?
Look,
Come on with me.
Look,
Green Book may not be in existence, but that is slowly but surely creeping in with the R party leading the charge. And this is just the beginning. And I applaud the United States for having a Black man chair the committee. And with his background, he certainly is passionate about it. But is his passion going to be enough to have the former person that led this country taken away in cuffs?
Listen,
that's what really needs to happen.
We'll hear from James on this, and then we'll hear from Sam. We're gonna let Sam go last, and then I'm gonna get a cup of tea while Sam. I'm gonna sip some tea and listen to Sam, because I can imagine Sam is coming fully loaded. But go ahead, James. I want to get your assessment, Mr. Historian, on this historic hearing last night.
I think good morning. everybody. And I believe that this has the potential to be as potent, even though in a slightly different historical context, than the Watergate hearings. And the Watergate hearings revealed how the Nixon administration was operating covertly, mainly in terms of the American interest. There was even talk that President Nixon was going to call up the army to protect him in order to stay in the White House. That is just how dicey that situation was in 1973 and 74. You know, as I listen to Terry Sanders talk, it bothers me, and I'm gonna tell you why, Stacy. Stacy, you and me and Sam are in these great metropolitan areas that are cosmopolitan with all these wonderful looking people. But you know, Terry is in the heartland, and she gets her news from different sources that when we get. And I am really chilled by what she was saying in terms of sundown towns, which I am familiar with, and those type of concepts. So we need to keep an eye on this because it may be leading us down a road that we thought we had gotten over about 50 years ago.
Listen, if we think we've gotten over it, then wake up. James, you mentioned too. You mentioned about Watergate, but isn't this is different, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, as far as one could easily argue how much worse this was, because you got a president saying, basically going along with the folks who said hang the vice president, the guy who had been basically capping for him all the time, and still, as our producer said, still is kind of capping for him. He wanted him hung. It was no question about it. Hang him.
Yes, you're absolutely right. They wanted to, you had that group, you probably seen the footage of hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. And this is also the same group of people who just wanted to just throw out the Congress, throw out the House, and throw out the Senate. That's dangerous in a democracy that we supposedly have. And we need to really double down on that. It's okay to have differing views on issues. That's what it's supposed to be. But when you start to want to tear down the fabric of our government, that's really serious.
Yeah, and Sam, your impressions from the hearing. David Youngblood says that I think this hearing was great and meaningless. The people who need to hear it did not see it.
Mm.
The hearing, as much new information, and I put new in quotation marks, that they revealed, as much new information was put out there. The hearing itself was an attempt for the United States as a government to CYA. And for those of y'all who are not familiar with what CYA is, that is to cover your backside. The degree to which it is effective, I don't see it being effective in the long run, because what January 6th affirmed and should have affirmed for Black people in particular is that the United States is only a democracy in name. And even when you look at democracy, democracy entails that the people at the grassroots do not have direct power. They cede power to a government. And if we look at it in context, what happened in January 6th is very similar to what happens at any juncture in American history when America tries to recalibrate itself into moderation. Moderation meaning that it will uphold its racist principles while appearing to be liberal. And that is what Joe Biden represented. And people who wanted Joe Biden in office did not want the overt racism that Donald Trump represented, even though it was a benefit to them. Reason why they will stop short at arresting and convicting Donald Trump and letting him continue to do what he does in the Republican Party. Even as the tape continues to play from January 6th, Donald Trump is consolidating power within the Republican Party and endorsing candidates, whether they are incumbents or newbies. He is endorsing them and they are winning primary races. So Donald Trump still has power. And nothing that we saw on January 6th is new. It might have sent chills through our spines, but at the very same time, as Black people, as people of African descent, as people who have been marginalized and taken out of power in this country, it should be no surprise that white people can storm the Capitol and nothing happened to them, because the system of so-called white supremacy is not going to fight itself. So that's the very first thing that I think we should look at. It is not going to fight itself. What we saw happen on January 6th was so-called democracy attempting to recalibrate itself, but its most carnal senses were not going to allow that.
Terry, how important was it for, and we talked about this pre-show, you had this, I have to describe her, this blonde white woman who talked about slipping in blood, who talked about being overwhelmed and being knocked unconscious. How important was that for America to see? Oh, Terry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. That was very important for America to see. That is what America embraces. And I'm sorry, long blonde hair. I didn't notice if her eyes were blue or not. But that would be, I think, what we would call a Barbie doll. And no shade on the lady herself, because she put in the work. The Mr. Dunn said he had trained her, Officer Dunn, and so he had the utmost respect for what she did. But you never saw her before. You saw the big black man, you saw the Hispanic man, you saw a little white man, but you never saw that blonde girl. And I'm sorry, woman, you never saw her. But when they rolled her out last night, that was the sympathy vote. And they held her back because as serious as her injuries were, and I never know anybody's name, the man with the tattoos, he was everywhere. He was on night television. He was all over the place. But they never brought her out. They brought her out to say, hey, look, America, even Barbie got injured. And Barbie was slipping in the blood. And Barbie was knocked unconscious twice. You wouldn't have knocked me out but once, because I'd have been gone. I mean, come on. I think that at some point, that was the sympathy vote. And I applaud them. That was great staging on their part. I mean, if you're going to have a trump card, I'm sorry, if you're going to have an ace in the hole, it was bad. If you're going to have an ace in the hole, then bring it out when you really, really need it. They didn't need her in February, March, April, May, up until now. And now, yeah.
Terry, you used a phrase there. It was good staging, and isn't that part of the problem? You guys, isn't that part of the problem with this hearing, that most people have not paid attention to it for the most part, and most people view it as just a show? Isn't that part of the problem?
And it is a problem. Now I have a daughter that's in media, so I got to watch my mouth because they'll come back and get me. But I think that it is a problem, and staging is it. You decide who's going to be on, what order they're going to be in, how long they're going to talk, down to what do they wear. Yeah, all of that. Yeah. I mean, we all came out in our clothes, but had this been, a media event, I wouldn't have on an Omaha t-shirt. James wouldn't have on a purple shirt. It would be blue or red. Sam would have on a different shirt, and they'd have his dreads pulled back. Come on. I mean, that's just what it is. And we'd all had on makeup. And they did all of that last night. Yeah, they did every bit of it. And I just...
So what's coming out of this, James? Yeah, I know James tends to look at the glass always as more than half full. So James, what's coming out of this?
That's a good question, Stacey, because if disaster happens on November the 8th and the Republicans happen to take the House, this is going to go away. And then it'll be up to Merrick Garland, your favorite attorney general, to actually pick up the ball and bring it. I think in terms of history, this is important in terms of history and making sure that it's on the record what has happened. I think this is important in terms of the nation's psyche and conscience, in terms of that this happened, this event, same as Watergate or Iran-Contra. And, even the Clinton impeachment hearings, even though that was extremely political. But if the Republicans take the U.S. House of Representatives in November, this is just going to go away.
Yes, Sam. Obviously, if that was, I have to say it too, right? And I think it's been said in other ways. If that was Black Lives Matter storming the Capitol, end result,
they wouldn't have made it up to the Capitol. They would have seen them from miles away, and they would have nipped that in the bud. To James's point, I do think that January 6th is of the same caliber as Iran, and I actually like the fact that James brought up Iran Contra. Looking back at it decades later, you definitely see the gravity of that. What I will say is that social media has changed the game in the sense that we saw January 6th unfold, in real time. With social media brought in the mix, that sort of nullifies what the hearings last night could have the potential to do, because right now this is live and center in front of people. And as much as people try to say that this is out of our mind, out of our psyche, I'm of a different belief. I think that people are, January 6th is just as fresh as it was yesterday, no matter how much people try to take it out of their memories. What last night is trying to do is, like was brought up before, assert in the history books that the U.S. government attempted to do something. Once again, it is about carrying out the concept of CYA. And they're trying to do a good job of it, but I don't think that people are believing it, and it's less about them not believing it, and it's more about why they are not believing it. We are in an era now where information is more than available to us, outside of what the so-called mainstream media tried to provide.
What's interesting to me, I found throughout all the testimony, all of the videos, and is this. There is a lot of charges there have been a lot of charges that have come out of this, a lot of criminal charges, mostly misdemeanors, mostly charges that are getting people, months in prison, not decades. But there's one major charge that some people in the beginning, I heard a lot of people in the beginning said that this is sedition, that the president, the former president, should be charged with sedition. Well, one person that I know of has been charged with sedition-related charges, and that is the leader of the Proud Boys, who happens to be Spanish, Hispanic?
Yes.
Yes. I think when you dissect that, and it doesn't take much to do so, that's a statement in itself, right?
Certainly is.
It's unbelievable.
It certainly is. Certainly is. And I sometimes wonder, Stacey, what happened the day before January the 6th was January the 5th, if you remember. And who won on January the 5th? Reverend Warnock and also in Georgia, that flipped the Senate to the Democratic control. So, but we don't talk about that very much. And I think it's very interesting that an Latino, I should say, is going to take the big hit for this. Enrique, he's going to take the big hit for this while his minions get off with, and we talked about this in the green room, with little misdemeanors and all that type of stuff.
Well, that's that saying, stay in your lane. He's never stayed in his lane, right? Yeah, people like Candace Owen. Oh, God. Let's move on before we get into that type of conversation. Go ahead, Terry.
I have a question. They brought out the man that was the documentarian.
Yes.
Who secretly filmed all these things. Did we know he existed before last night?
Well, that's a good point, Terry. Did we know he existed, Sam?
I personally didn't.
I did not.
I didn't. No,
I didn't.
And some of his film clips, while they said they had no sound, what do they say? A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
He had some pictures that were very, I think, damaging to the Proud Boys and the Beastie Boys and everybody else.
don't indict the Beastie Boys.
I'm sorry, not
got into the Hall of Fame. Leave the Beastie Boys
who I'm talking about. All those fellas that allegedly got this together and were meeting the night before in parking
Mhm.
garages.
Mhm.
Okay, if he knew about that,
Yeah.
did he tell anybody? And if he told anybody, who did he tell?
Mhm.
And where's that person? And I'm going to bring up something else, Uvalde. Now they dragging that man down through the dirt
Yes.
because he didn't have the proper radio, the school wasn't locked. Well, here's somebody that had to have known.
Mhm.
Can he be
Well,
an accessory because he knew and didn't
yeah. Did he
tell?
secretly do it? What was
Well,
he?
that's a good
What
point.
was he? Listen, they had some, and so Terry, they did have some folks embedded in the Proud Boys and the Oath Seekers, right?
Yeah,
They
the
did.
oath
The
keepers. That's
FBI,
what I meant. I'm
the
striping.
Secret
Lord.
Service or the FBI or whomever did
Hmm.
have some moles in there,
Right,
and it's a good question. And because this guy that you're talking, he didn't even want to testify,
right.
so. So you have to wonder, and he's got these secret footages and things
Mhm.
like that. Real interesting. What the point you raise.
Go back to the Watergate tapes and remember how that was such a secret.
Yeah.
So there's some parallels, but in 2022, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah,
That's my question. And kudos to the documentarian because he's still living. Because had he really,
yeah, yeah.
uncovered some stuff, he wouldn't have been able to breathe to tell about it, and his footage would just mysteriously be gone.
Yeah, couple
Mhm.
of folks. I think we should mention Michelle Madison says she'll never forget January 6th. She says I was on the train headed south, and the rioters stormed on the train like gangsters. One guy threatened me because I was filming them. I got some footage anyway, while in shock. And Paris Brown of the Baltimore Times writes that I was out of the country on January 6th, so watching this from another country seemed surreal. It was hard to believe I was looking at what was going on in America at that moment. I'm sure just like 9/11, it's the where were you when
Mhm.
type things. Listen, before we have to close, let's talk about this leaked draft report from a Harvard faculty committee that revealed the university possesses in its museum collection the remains of nearly 7,000 Native Americans and almost 20 people who were likely enslaved. This is according to the Howard Crimson. The draft report, which has not yet been finalized and was dated in April, is the work of a steering committee tasked with making plans for Harvard's collection of human remains. It urges the university to return the remains to descendants' families, or if ancestry is unclear, to consult with the descendants' communities about how to address returning the remains. This goes back, and they're talking in this case, how Harvard had pledged $100 million to implement the recommendations in the report, and they talked about reparations as well. I know, James, you had some thoughts on reparations and what the president should or could do. Let's hear from you on that, and then I want to hear from Sam on this Harvard University situation.
Well, I believe that President Biden should issue an executive order setting up a reparations commission and to study reparations for African Americans. Keep in mind that this is not unusual in American history. Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation functionally was an executive order. Harry Truman's program to desegregate the military, that was an executive order. And President Clinton, if you recall, held those hearings on race relations. That was done by executive order. So I think that it is well within President Biden's right and power to issue an executive order setting up a commission studying reparations.
Yeah, Sam, and I wanted to go to you too because this idea that they have the bones, the skeletal remains. What's up with that?
Sickening, very sickening. Black people are very, very passionate about their ancestors, about people who passed away. And that speaks to the spiritual aspect of what the United States has done in regards to Black people in this country. It goes well beyond political and economics. You are talking about something that's spiritual, and it speaks to what they believe we are. And if we are to get true reparations, we need a spiritual recentering, and that includes the reallocation of our remains, and and that includes healing, healing that is multi-generational, that is epigenetic, in the sense that we are healing our ancestors. And this takes me back to what happened in Philadelphia. Dr. Thomas Farley, who currently works for the DC government, after he was fired in Philadelphia, was behind the acquisition of the remains of some of the movement's people. So again, this is not a one-time thing. This is something that the U.S. government does, and the government is people. So I'm going to leave it there, but it's not a one-off. I'm pretty sure if you go to any university in this country, they would have done the same thing.
Yeah, we've seen other universities come out in the last few years, especially in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, talking about reparations in some form. But the whole story is certainly far from being told there. Sam alluded to there. Terry, I'll give you a thought on that as well. I mean, having more than 7,000 remains in their museum collection, isn't that quite troubling?
That's troubling. And I'm real basic. Where'd they get them from? I mean, were these people that they had enslaved?
Mm-hmm.
And when the slave died, throw them over there in that pile. I mean, that's how it sounds. And I have been to historical societies, and people give historical societies a lot of stuff. In Nebraska, our historical society is in Lincoln, and I visited that, and they said that they have so many thousands of quilts and sleigh beds, and they take these things, they don't even have anywhere to store it. So is it that they have so many bones, they now have nowhere to store them, so they're going to tell the truth and say, oh yeah, and by the way, let us pay you because, you know, we really shouldn't have done this. I don't understand. I don't think you have to be a Harvard scholar to get that this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is wrong. Yeah. So, you know, this country needs to come clean about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And it's just slowly and surely leaking out, or not even leaking, seeping out of places what they have done. Oh, but we want to make it better. Can we pay you? Let's look at the basis of why did you do it to begin with. And, you know, everybody's about calling folks as forefathers and saying, well, you know, Uncle James was wrong when he did this and that. Let's talk about those people. Who was wrong? Who are the wrong people? And have they been canonized in their institutions and made to sound really important when they weren't? Let's call it what it is.
Call it what it is. Exactly. It's an ongoing thing. I agree with Sam that you go to most universities, if not all of them, and you will find something similar, or something probably even more appalling, if you can think of anything more appalling. But this is why we're the Black Press. We got to keep pressing on and bringing this information to the fore. Sam Collins of the Informer, James Wright of the Informer, they do a fantastic job of that on a daily basis. And I know that the Omaha Star works constantly to bring truth to power out there in Nebraska. And Terry, we got to come out there and hang out with you in Nebraska. We got to see what the bluegrass is all about.
We need to do an NNPA event here.
Absolutely.
Really, I have a T-shirt that I designed. It says, yes, I'm from Omaha, and there are Black people in Nebraska. As I travel, and I say, I'm from Nebraska. Do you ride horses? No, we have cars.
You ride horses.
Is there corn in your backyard? No, that's on the farm. I mean, people have a misconception. We are everywhere. Black folks are everywhere. Mm-hmm. It just sounds really crazy. And you know,
Well,
when
isn't that why we're talking about what we're talking about this
yeah,
morning? We're talking about the insurrections. We're talking about
right.
reparations because Black people are everywhere, and they're, Public Enemy Chuck D said fear of a Black planet, and
Mhm.
so there you go, right there.
Mhm.
No
And aren't we
denying that.
taking over? Isn't that part of the problem?
That's
That
the problem.
we are reproducing and the other people aren't.
Yes.
And pretty soon it's going to be more of us
Yes.
than them.
Yes.
And what kind of problem is that going to make?
That's a
Look for
fact.
those
That's a
bones.
fact.
It'd be
Look
so
for those
cool,
bones.
Sam. It'd be so cool if we close out with you can't trust it. Public Enemy.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Listen, one of the sessions, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but that's okay. I'm always either ahead or behind, never on time. But register for our national convention. It's the 195th anniversary of the Black Press. We're going to be in New Orleans in just about 2 weeks now, in exactly 2 weeks, right? We'll be hanging out, eating some good food, listening to some good information. The Black Press will observe its annual convention, but the 195th year of the Black Press. And one of the panels is going to be Get Out, Black America, Get Out the Vote. And Latasha Brown will be a
Good.
presenter there. It's one of those sessions and panels that you don't want to miss. Cliff Albright, the co-founder and executive director of Black Votes Matter, Black Voters Matter, will also be on that panel. So check us out in New Orleans in 2 weeks on the 22nd, June 22nd to June 25th to be specific. NMPA-events.com. You can register. Great hotel on the riverfront there. In fact, speaking of the riverfront, that Saturday we're going to be taking a boat ride on the Mississippi and having a good time. So join us there. The public is more than welcome. We welcome you with open arms to the Black Press of America. Thanks for watching. Let it be known. Next week, I'm looking forward to this because my daughter is looking forward to this. And anytime your daughter is looking forward to something, you have to be excited. But on this program, we're going to have Skip Marley on this program. She can't
Oh,
wait
yeah.
because we had Ziggy Marley before, and like everybody in the world watched except my daughter. She's like, it's not Skip. So now we're going to have Skip. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank